Fear, directed by James Foley, premiered in 1996. It stars Mark Wahlberg and Reese Witherspoon, which would both be one of their first big movies. The first half of this movie plays out like an average romance movie. It follows Nicole Walker, played by Reese, who falls in love with David McCall, played by Mark. Nicole's overprotective dad, Steven, played by William Peterson, is suspicious of David as he's a bit older than her. Nevertheless, David is still able to hook Nicole with his charms. He later meets Nicole's family and is able to convince them that he is a sweet, knowledgeable man, at least for now. As their relationship progresses and Nicole becomes head over heels for him, David's true personality soon begins to show, and as the title would hint, it's not so pretty. The first time David shows his true colors is when he punches Nicole's friend Gary, as he believed he was trying to steal his girl. Probably not the best way to handle a situation, because this obviously shocks Nicole and causes her to want to be as far away from him as possible.
What? Come on.
Go away! Away from me!
Later on, David eventually convinces her to get back with him, but that's not the end of it. David's psychotic behavior starts to get worse as he begins to threaten Steven if he tries to come between them.
You know, Steve, you're really not a faggot.
What?
No, I'm serious. You seem like a pretty solid guy. You should lighten up on yourself.
What eventually breaks the last straw for Nicole is when she arrives at David's place, which she shares with other not-so-friendly guys. She peeks into the window and sees her best friend Margot, played by Alyssa Milano, being kissed and carried away by David. Horrified, Nicole drives away as fast as possible. More of David's violent impulses take place now, proving at this point that he is nowhere near a nice guy. He finds out that Nicole is upset about the whole cheating incident, and this causes him to blame it on Margot and beat her.
What the fuck do you think you're doing?
Please leave me alone.
Huh? What did you say to Nicole?
Nothing.
You fucking lying fucking whore. Get the fuck out of the car. You lying fucking whore.
David also destroys Steven's quite expensive Mustang convertible after Steven tells him to stay away from his daughter. Steven goes to confront David at his house, but since he's not there, he just decides to trash the place instead. While there, he sees pretty messed up stuff. Not knowing about his wrecked house yet, David sees Nicole still hanging out with Gary, so he follows him on his walk home alone. Gary is obviously frightened, and for good reason, because David ends up killing him. Once David returns to his house along with the rest of the gang, he knows exactly what happened.
I know who did it.
You will fucking kill whoever did this.
Yeah, who?
Yeah, let's pay the dude a fucking visit then.
All right.
Margot shows up to Nicole's to tell her that Gary was found dead. Shortly after, David's group shows up to their house as well.
An eye for an eye, eh, Mr. Walker, sir? You fuck up my house, I'll fuck up yours!
The family scrambles to lock them out, but they don't give up that easily.
It all could have been different, Mr. Walker. You should have allowed nature to take its course. In the end, it will anyway. So let me the fucking house!
The security guard that shows up only makes things worse, because this eventually gives the gang access to handcuffs and more guns. They eventually make it inside after holding Steven at gunpoint, and once they get inside, they tie him and his girlfriend up. When David goes upstairs to see Nicole, he tries to get her to leave with him, but she refuses.
I'm sorry it has to be like this, but it does. It's not our fault. It's his. I tried so hard to be nice.
Luckily, Steven breaks free and runs up to fight him. This eventually leads to David being killed, and the movie ends. Gary has his neck snapped by David. Kaiser, the family dog, has his head cut off and shoved through the doggy door.
Come on. That's a good boy.
Larry, the security guard, is shot by one of David's guys, Terry. Terry is run over by Toby, Nicole's little brother, who's trying to call the police from the car phone. Logan, another one of the guys, is shot in the head by David after he sees him messing with Nicole. David is thrown out of a window by Steven and lands on the ground below. I enjoyed the suspense of this movie because I knew something bad was going to happen, I just didn't know when or how it would occur. David is able to get under the dad's skin in any way possible that really makes the dad uneasy towards him. But as Nicole is oblivious to this, it creates a more difficult relationship between her and her father that makes it easier for David to swoop in, such as when David hits himself to make it seem like Steven beat him up. This movie was fairly scary, not in the way most horror movies are, but by the fact that it's a real incident that many people are faced with, and it's so unexpected. You never know when someone who you thought was really nice and trustworthy is actually an obsessed, psychotic killer. This movie has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 41%, which I personally feel is unfair. It wasn't a completely original and new story, but it was interesting enough to give it more credit. It had some memorable scenes that I was not expecting, and that genuinely shocked me. The only thing I was disappointed on was the ending. David's death was very anticlimactic and everything felt rushed. The movie just felt like it didn't have much closure besides a group hug and a couple cop cars at the end. A scene that I felt was memorable was when Nicole and David go on a date to a carnival. They get on a roller coaster and get a little frisky. In real life this would be kind of trashy and gross, but since it's a movie it seems a lot more romantic. The reason I feel this is memorable is not because they're getting busy, but because it kind of serves as a metaphor for their relationship as a whole. Nicole is excited and having fun when she first gets on the ride, and as she gets closer to the top of the roller coaster, aka the peak of their relationship, she is having a fantastic time for more reasons than one. But all roller coasters eventually have to come down. But metaphorically speaking, this ride will continue to go down for her and things will only get worse until something is stopped. This isn't a very deep metaphor and might not have even been intentional, but it's interesting to think about. If you didn't know, Mark Wahlberg got his start to fame as a rapper. His stage name was Marky Mark and he produced songs such as Good Vibrations. He also had multiple songs that were never released. Some of these unreleased songs were played during the movie, such as Illest and Eerie Vibe. In 2012, one of Justin Bieber's colleagues stated that the singer was interested in starring in a remake for the movie, even though there were no plans to do this at the time. I'm not really sure how this would have worked, as Justin was only 20 at the time and could easily pass as a high school student, which would not have fit how David is portrayed. Even though a remake with Justin Bieber did not happen, Universal Pictures started writing the script more recently for a remake that is told through Nicole's perspective. It's not known when this movie will premiere or if it's even a solid plan yet, but I feel that the movie should just be left alone to how it is. A 90s teenage thriller that should stay in the 90s.